Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to be comparing the New Balance MiUK 991 V1 with the New Balance MiUK 991 V2. Now that the 991 V2 has been out for a while, and the fact that I've also been able to wear the V2 for a while and form my full opinion on the V2, I thought it would be a good idea to compare the V2 to the original 991. Originally released in 2001, the 991 was the first New Balance model to feature absorb not only in the heel but also in the forefoot. This allowed for extra cushioning and better comfort. The 991 was also the first shoe to feature the Endurance rubber compound on the outsole to improve durability. The 991 also introduced a change in the 990 naming convention. Before the 991, it was simply the 990 and then version 1, 2, and 3, etc. But the 991 introduced the 99X naming convention we're familiar with today. The 991 V1 was a shoe that introduced a lot of new technology to a shoe and was one of the first 99X models to be made in the UK. Originally released late in 2023, the 991 V2 presented an evolved take on the iconic 991. Version 2 provided a more sleeker profile to the overall look of the shoe, while still retaining the familiar look of the original. The 991 V2 introduced full-length fuel cell cushioning to the 991 series. The 991 V2 is an evolved take on the iconic original. In terms of a side-by-side comparison of the two shoes, as you can see, the 991 V2, as I said earlier, it has an overall sleeker look than the original 991. I personally think it looks a bit more sporty in contrast to the original. The original is a bit chunkier and has more of a retro look. Most of the paneling is surprisingly similar to both shoes. One of the biggest differences has got to be the oval cutout with the 991 branding. On the 991 V2, it's simply on the very back of the heel, but on the 991 V2, you get the oval cutout on the side of the ankle area. And replacing the back branding is a V2 embroidered on. You also get some slightly different branding on the tongues. The 991 obviously just features New Balance 991 branding, and then the V2 branding features New Balance 991 branding on the top of the tongue as well as V2 branding in the middle of it. By far the biggest differences between both versions are the midsoles and outsoles. As I said earlier, the original 991 features a more chunkier midsole. It does feature some exposed absorb pods, but they are protected in a clear plastic. You got some small pods in the forefoot as well as a larger area in the back heel area. In contrast, the 991 V2 also features some exposed absorb pods, but they are exactly that. They're exposed and they're not protected with a plastic outer, and you can easily feel the raw rubber of the absorb SBS. The outsoles feature similar shapes, but as you can see, there are some small design differences. The original 991 features an interesting N tread pattern. As you can see, you have the N logo as part of the tread, and the 991 V2 loses that, and the V2 of course shows off the exposed fuel cell foam. The 991 V1 features only absorb in the midsole. Absorb midsoles are both responsive and absorb impact through a combination of cushioning and compression resistance, and this combo allows for great comfort and cushioning without being overly soft and squishy. The 991 V2 also features absorb, but of course its most distinctive addition is the addition of the full-length fuel cell in the midsole. Fuel cell, in addition to being very lightweight and soft, features high rebound technology to give runners a propulsive feel to help drive them forward, and it's a very prominent foam found in New Balance's high-end performance running shoes. In terms of sizing for the 991 V1, I go true to size. I'm a true size 9.5, and I get my 991 V1s in a size 9.5, and they fit me well. The 991 V1 also has a normal width in my opinion. The 991 V2 on the other hand, I personally feel like it fits bigger, especially in the toe box, so I recommend going down half a size. This 991 V2 is a size 9.5, and I definitely have some extra room in the toe box area. I was able to try a 991 V2 in a size 9 in person at a New Balance store, and that was definitely the way to go. And I personally think the 991 V2 also has a normal width. And it's also important to note that neither the version 1 or version 2 come in wider or narrower widths. In terms of comfort comparison, I'll flash up both of my scores for both the 991 V1 and V2. I personally think both of the shoes are comfortable in their own way. The 991 V1 features a great combination of both firmness and softness. It's not too overly soft or squishy on feet, nor is it too overly firm or stiff on feet. It's definitely not the most comfortable shoe in New Balance's lineup, and the midsole, in my opinion, does favor a bit more on the firm side, but it's still great for everyday casual wear. And I really do like the shape of the midsole. I think it's very form-fitting, and it's a good shape for comfort. The 991 V2, on the other hand, with the addition of FeelCell, it definitely favors the softer side, and it's a lot softer than the version 1. I personally think the 991 V2 is more comfortable than the 991 V1 because of the addition of the full-length FeelCell midsole. I personally prefer my shoes to be a bit softer, and that's why I like the addition of FeelCell in the 991 V2 as well as the 990 V6. I will say the 991 V2's midsole is a bit on the flatter side, but it makes up for that with its full-length FeelCell midsole. In terms of prices, the 991 V1 retails on the lower end for $220, and that goes for the core GRs like the core gray and the core black. They usually retail for around $220, or at the very least here in the US. In terms of the higher end, the 991 V1 can retail for upwards of $260, and that's usually for the special edition GRs as well as the collabs like the MLE Andor collabs. Obviously, the 991 V2 hasn't been out for a long time, and there's only been a handful of collabs as well as core colorways. In terms of the core colorways, it is a lot more expensive than the V1. The core colorways for the 991 V2 currently retail for $250 here in the US, and of course, being the core colorways, that is going to be the low end of the pricing for the 991 V2. In terms of the higher end, right now there have only really been two high-profile collabs for the 991 V2, that being the Paddock collab and the Stone Island collab. The Stone Island collab retailed for $270, and I would not be surprised if there are some future collabs that retail for even higher. In terms of quality, I feel like when you simply compare the core colorways, I gotta say they are on par, they're equal to each other. There is that small price difference with the core colorways, but the price difference is mostly for the technology in the midsole. The addition of FeelCell is obviously gonna inflate the price of the V2, but in terms of quality, when you compare the core colorways, the suedes, the nubucks, the meshes feel pretty much the same on both shoes. They're both high quality and on par for a core colorway. Of course, quality will vary from colorway to colorway, from special edition to special edition, from collab to collab. Obviously, some of the collabs are more expensive and utilize higher end materials and even different materials at that, so I can't really put an exact quality comparison, but regardless, when you compare them in similar materials, they're both pretty much the same. So when determining my pick of the two, the 991 V1 versus the 991 V2, honestly, I'm on the fence, and I have picks for two different reasons. In terms of looks, I prefer the look of the 991 V1, and I can't really explain it. I just like the overall shape of the 991 V1 better. I mean, obviously it's been out for a while, maybe it's just because it's more familiar, but really I just prefer the classic and retro look of it, and I like the chunkier midsole. However, when it comes to comfort, that easily goes to the 991 V2 because of that softer FeelCell midsole, and I feel like it's a lot more comfortable than the original 991. So which do you guys prefer, the classic 991 V1 or the new 991 V2? I'd definitely like to know down in the comments. So that's going to do it for this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, follow me on my socials, check out the Intelligent site for more New Balance content and guides. If you really loved the comparison video, please consider leaving a super thanks in the tip jar below, and thanks for watching.